Hi, my name is Don, and I'm the owner and operator of West Coast Classic Cougar for the last 28 years. And this is my first auction on Bring a Trailer. I'm no stranger to auctions. I've been doing eBay since 1996, and we've done well over 1,000 Cougar and Cougar-related items on there. But I wanted to try something new, and I wanted to do it with this car. It was 30 years ago this week that I sold my little high school 68 Cougar, and it too was a 68 Grecian Gold. So this is kind of a full circle for me. And I'm going to do a very detailed walk around on this car because we pride ourselves here in that every time we've shipped out a car or a part, people don't usually say, I didn't see this or I didn't know this about the car or the part. And we want to keep that reputation alive. So bear with me as I get into the minutia of a 68 Cougar. This is basically a two-owner car. The first owner traded it in 1984. The second owner bought it for a daily driver, a low-mile, clean daily driver. But in 1987, he decided to take it off the road for a while and do an amateur restoration. And when I say amateur restoration, that puts up some red flags. Well, this car didn't need much. It needed a paint job and a freshening up. It was really well taken care of. These are the original bumpers that have been re-chromed. This is the unrestored grille. The tail lights, he said not one dent has ever happened in this car. He said a little crease about that long was in the quarter panel that was easily ironed out. And you cannot tell when you open the trunk where that was ever at. So this is a no rust ever car. It's only been driven in the rain once since 1987. The previous owner said in 1992, after a car show, driving a short distance home, he got rained on. Both owners kept it in the garage its whole life. So this has been a pampered Western car. So I'm going to walk you around and show you what it looks like. What I like about a car that's never been in a fender bender is how well everything lines up. It's almost impossible to get these cars to line up this nice. In fact, from the factory, I don't know if they lined up this nice. This is this exact perfect alignment here. See this little rubber piece here? It is supposed to touch both the bumper and the fender. And it does exactly that. Fits in that gap perfectly. Notice the rubber is still shiny and pliable. No weather cracks in it. The bumper, like I say, was re-chromed a lot of years ago. They did a good job. I actually changed out the aluminum trim. It was the original 150,000 mile trim with very few little dings. You know, we'll call them cinder marks. But I thought this car merited a restored 6-piece aluminum anodized set. When a lot of people restore these, they call polishing them restored. No, they're supposed to be bright dipped anodized. Also notice that this is not a restored grille. Notice how this is starting to turn color a little bit. The black paint too is showing a little bit tired. But look at the chrome on here. It's exquisite. It's just the best you'll ever find. I've seen 30,000 mile cars that didn't look this clean on the chrome. That's testament of being babied and kept inside. This too, original background decal. I did change the Mercury emblem. It was looking a little tired, and we sell these new. Notice here, this is the worst paint blemish in the whole car. He had bad hood hinges, and I have since changed those hood hinges, so that's no longer a problem. I did put the original springs back on the reproduction hinges. The previous owner tried his hardest to stay original under the hood. He does have the original 2-barrel carburetor, rebuilt, ready to reinstall, but after he quit going to judge shows, he felt that the Holley gave it a little more pep. Notice he spent a lot of money putting a correct Autolite battery in there, correct cables, correct markings. Keep in mind, a lot of the parts on this car were available at the dealership new back in '87. Also notice he has recently changed the radiator and did not recore his original, but he kept the original, and the original comes with the car. It's the Fomoco marked core radiator. Correct Midland banded booster. Most of the correct decals are in place. One thing that I'm not sure why this was done, but the underside of this is supposed to be painted gold, Grecian gold, like the rest of it. And then a hood pad. Well, we all know why the hood pad isn't there. They fill up with dust, they get ripped, they fall off. The reproductions aren't very good. But I don't know why this hood was painted black underneath. It works, and it would be easy to repaint in Grecian gold. Here's something else I like. A lot of times when people restore cars, they get rid of all the ugly. Like, see this blotch here? That's factory. When they were spraying on some of these coatings and sealants and stuff, they were sloppy. And this is all the original sealer. And these ugly spots are, in fact, original. You will notice a couple of incorrect, who knows why they're here, items here. The car has an antiquated alarm and an antiquated but working cruise control. So here's your pin switches for your old-fashioned 1980s alarm. I'll let the new owner take those out. They aren't very attractive, and I don't think they're very useful. The vacuum actuated headlight doors work absolutely perfectly. He put NOS, service replacement, vacuum pods in there when he restored the car. Do know that the production run would have been semi-gloss black like everything else. So to be correct, those should be painted black. I also noticed that these are the original hoses. See the ribs in them here? Put exactly where they belong in the clips. And this is a super soft rubber hose that even feels, you know, sticky, just like original. Usually these old vacuum hoses are hard and brittle, and these original plastic tees just crumble when you touch them. This is highly unusual to see a 100% working vacuum headlight system intact. Most people these days are putting in the electric headlight system, which is a great way to go, but we got to keep a few of them original. The previous owner wanted to keep true to the original tires on it, so we have Firestone bias plies all the way around. What I really like about these is the small white wall. So many of the white wall tires today are actually kind of large and way out here. So I really like that he bought 5 of these, and everybody gives bias plies a hard time, but when they're brand new and you're driving the car gentle, they're fine. Keep in mind, this suspension was designed for bias ply tires, not radial. I did upgrade the caps. These were available as a factory or over-the-counter option. I'm not crazy about the original caps on this, so if the new owner wants the originals as opposed to these, I'd be glad to do it. Also, if the bidding gets up over $30,000 at no charge, I will trade this set of wheels and tires and caps for a set of 5-spoke rally wheels that were also optional. I mentioned that a lot of the parts were available brand new in the day when he repainted this car. The wheellet moldings were one of said items, so these are just perfect, not a mark on any of them. These days, if you go on eBay or even my website, you'll pay upwards to $1,000 for a set of 4 of these. To get them properly restored is about $500 if you have real nice cores. There's just nothing like NOS Ford though, so this is just a nice set of wheel lip moldings on here to set the car off. The rocker moldings, I do believe, are original. They show a little bit of gravel wear here, but very little. It's just, this is from the Seattle area and just hasn't spent a lot of time on gravel roads, thus not much rash here. All the stainless trim on the car is original to the car and unrestored and mint. What I like about original trim is it has just a little bit of a satin finish. If you were to buy this restored trim off my website, it is what we call over-restored and has a mirror-like finish. So you only get original once, and this is just exquisite. This is a replacement windshield, but he spent a substantial amount of money and got the correct Carlite tinted and shaded windshield. The vinyl top is the correct texture and nice and tight. There was zero rust, no surface rust, no rust whatsoever when they peeled the original off. The original wasn't ripped. From the sounds of it, I probably would have kept it and just recolored it, but a new one was put on. Keep in mind that almost nobody puts these stainless keepers back in place. They usually just fill the gutter with a sealant, which actually works quite well, but this is how they did it from the factory. These little strips are actually a very sought after piece. I will point out one mistake they made. The installer decided that the seam would look good lined up with this seam, when in fact this seam should match with this seam. So he's about 3 inches off in his placement of that seam. Notice the original package tray. Also notice that the back of the leather seat is still shiny and pliable. Usually those leather seats on the back where they hit the UV rays are very dry and cracked and sometimes even split. So that's a real treat. All of the glass in this car, the tempered glass, all 7 pieces, are correct date-coated tinted Carlite glass. While I won't say the pinstriping is of a concours level, they did make an effort to do the correct hand-painted pinstripe. Notice the little stop marks at the end of the tape that was here. The gap should be a little larger right there, I should say. But if you look down here, the quarter panel shows some imperfections in the pinstripe. That is very true to form. If you ever see perfect pinstriping on one of these cars, that's what we call over-restored. The paint on the car was probably a over-restored situation. It's 2-stage with a clear, and there's no orange peel in it whatsoever, so that's not quite original. On the back here, I think this deck light cover might be the worst piece of chrome on the car. Notice it has some dots in it, not pits, but just little age freckles, we'll say. I was tempted to change that out because these are very inexpensive on our website, but again, it's fun to see a Survivor piece like that. The tail lights look like they almost came out of the package. The chrome is just exquisite on them. That's the original detail black. Those are the original, not reproduction lenses, same as you'd find on a 67 Shelby. This is the correct aluminum deck lid molding. I put it on there. In the 80s, all that was available from Ford was a stainless service replacement. And the stainless will hold up better, but the correct piece is aluminum on this, so I wanted them to match, so I went ahead, even though the others that I took off this were very nice, I went ahead and replaced all 3 pieces of aluminum here, and I put a little brighter emblem on here. The original was looking a little tarnished, and since these aren't much money, I figure why not put one on. The bumper was re-chromed, but if you look careful in this little nook here, the chrome is showing some age on it. So again, if the bidding gets up over $30,000, I'm going to go ahead and replace that, have this replated at no cost. Okay, I'm going to point out some things in the trunk here. It's a brand new reproduction spare tire. The jack, I have verified that it's under there and it's in perfect condition. It looks like it's never been used. The rim also looks like it's never been used. And when you look at the other end of this jack, I don't think it's ever been used. Notice how there's no ridge here. Whenever you torque down lug nuts, you usually get just a little bit of a ridge. I don't know what happened to the original spare, but it is gone. Original decal here. And here, and this is original paint with the original, somewhat still soft weather strip. Okay, the previous owner said the one little crease on the car was in this area here, but this is the original sound deadener, and I have looked and looked, and I can't see where any body work's been done, so that crease must have been very minor. These are almost always missing, little protectors. You don't want your suitcase to get jabbed with the studs here. This is a reproduction mat. Original anti-rattler rubber piece here that's ribbed. Okay, I want to walk you through the interior of this car. It's pretty much an unrestored, all original interior that, like I've said before, just has been pampered, garage kept, and does not have the issues that most interiors that have been subjected to UV rays have, or kids. No kids, no smokers, no pets, no UV rays for long periods of time. Let's start off with the steering wheel. We can tell it's a 150,000 mile car because of the lack of wood grain definition here. You can see a little bit still left there. What I do like is the Mylar strip is 100% intact on the inside and out. The steering wheel, you can tell, wasn't driven 150,000 miles with a guy with calluses like me, because the texture is still on here. And these are known for shrinking, and as time goes on they will shrink so much that this plastic bezel will break. It'll buckle and snap. This one's in there tight right there, and I will say it's a little bit firm, a little more on this side than this side, but it still has a nice sheen to it, still has most of the grain on it. Original horn ring, not a reproduction. The dash pad, these are worth buku bucks for guys that don't want a reproduction in their car. Reproductions never look the same. Just nice, perfect texture. It's not all sticky like one that's been in the sun. You can squeeze it and it just pops right back. It's just beautiful. Another thing that's just unheard of in these cars is the wood grain that looks this rich with no drill holes, scratches, blemishes of any kind. The background on the gauges is usually cracked and the paint's all bubbly. The white is still nice and crisp on these, on the font on here. Every one of the gauges works. The speedometer works, the needle doesn't bounce, the tack works. Oil gauge, the chrome is still on the emblem, plus the dash plastic. This chrome here is always peeling and whatnot. This still is, you know, it shows some wear. It's not perfect, but looks really good. The heater fans in these are known for getting loud and they'll squeak. This one is just nice and quiet. Since it doesn't have air conditioning, you have a simplified dash and less to go wrong. The AM radio does work, but this is more of an 8-track holder than an 8-track player. It is not original to the car. It's era correct. That door is what we're used to seeing in a 67 or 68 Cougar, but this is not the correct player, so I just take it out and put the original back in. It does come with the original AM radio. It hasn't been tested. The clock has been converted to quartz, but it's a 1980s conversion that's operated on a battery, I think a C-size battery. And notice the arm is a little jerky. I really don't like that. Plus, on this conversion that was available in the 80s, you can't change the time. So when your battery dies, you have to put the battery in at the exact minute and start the clock back up again. And we disconnected the battery earlier, so I'm already off on the time. So, you know, once the bidding gets to 30,000, do know that a rebuilt West Coast Classic Cougar correct quartz clock will be included and installed in the auction. This is a reproduction handle. Every one of these cracks. You know, the plastic dries up and you'll get a crack, and if you're lucky, the crack will be on the front edge. We weren't lucky on this one, and it did get a crack right through there, so I put a quality reproduction in there. These belt buckles are just exquisite. I mean, these Starburst decals are usually gone. There's usually cracks in here. There's rust in here oftentimes. These are just nice. This lap belt, obviously every time, you don't usually see them this bad. And it must have been every time that they got in the car, they readjusted it, you know, pulled it through and then pulled it this way to adjust. So that's kind of unsightly considering how perfect all the other ones are. Again, once the bidding hits 30,000, I have one out of a low mile car that I will include for free. Moving right along, there's so many items in here that almost are always reproduction, and this car original, like these little end caps. These are the same as 68 Mustang Deluxe, and to find one with the color still in there and no pits on here is just unheard of. These are usually reproduction on most cars. This looks unusually nice. The problem with the reproductions is they're indexed just a little off, so your hand always looks like it's a little too far up or a little too far down. They don't go that direction like they're supposed to. Believe it or not, a replacement armrest for one of these cars, if you could find a driver's side 1 year only 68 XR7 only armrest, probably run you $200 plus, but that's if you could find one. Very rare to see one of these armrests that isn't peeling and cracked. The door panels, obviously they didn't drive around with their arm out the window because the texture is still 100% intact in here. Just unheard of to have a door panel without a mark on it. And I say without a mark on it, I did notice that right here where it closes against the weather strip, you have a tiny bit of wear. But in the little bit on the mat pocket where your foot rubs on the bottom of these. But just look at how straight, clean, soft these door panels are. Believe it or not, they are supposed to have the screws in here. That is the wrong screw. So that needs to be changed. Don't know how the wrong Phillips screw got in there. Also, this brown screw here, anyway, it's supposed to be painted chocolate brown. It's supposed to be a beveled screw and be flush into the dash. That is the wrong screw. So at one time somebody got into this dash, lost the screw, put the wrong one in there. Let's look up here at the overhead console. Usually from heat, these have drawn up and are delaminating and pulling away from the metal bracketry. This one is just nice and soft. Original headliner, 100% perfect. There are no mouse holes. There's no fraying. Everything is perfect on here. And you can tell these map lights here are original as well because the reproductions are a little shinier. These have more sharp edges and stuff, so very hard to find them with no pits. Almost every one of these mirrors needs to be resilvered by this late date. I see one little dot up there at the end. I doubt the camera's going to get it. Visors are correct with the correct fasteners here, and the hardware is original, not pitted. These pads are another thing. This is a Cougar only part. They're just nice and soft. I mean, just these are usually as hard as a rock and flat black from the heat. It's just unheard of to find all this soft trim like this. It's just like it was brand new almost. Turn you around to the back here. These seats, this is kind of a scam that Lincoln Mercury did. They gave you vinyl all here. They gave you opposing texture vinyl, and then they said leather front and rear. Well, this is leather. This little piece right here is leather. So we got vinyl, 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 little piece of leather. Again, usually these are so brittle and ugly looking. These are, believe it or not, these are original. They look NOS. They look like our reproductions. They're not. Package tray, for some reason, he had a little piece of carpet with some glue around the edges. I'll let the new owner figure out how to get those little sticky spots of glue off. That's unfortunate, but it was protected all these years. There's not a mark in it. Shoulder belts often got thrown away on these. They were often pitted in the chrome. The chrome is perfect on these. These are like new. The carpet in this is reproduction. I can tell just by feeling it that this is a softer auto custom carpet replacement. And notice how it's a little fuzzy there. The original would be more woolly, coarse feeling. So unfortunately this is not an original carpet car. Okay, in the ashtray, I do believe that has been repainted. I'm not sure in there, but anyway, either way, if it was smoked in, it wasn't smoked in much. Let's look at the original lighter, see how much use we got on that. Yeah, it looks like it might have been used a few times, but not heavily. Original e-brake handle. These are plastic and are prone to breaking. This one's bent a little bit. It's got the original plastic, not metal service replacement vent handle. So very few of these delicate plastic original equipment pieces available. The reproduction and the service replacement were metal, and the metal ones never break. They were a better idea, but kind of cool to see an original unbroken part there. These seats have been redone in leather. I don't care how low mile car you have. After 50 years, it dries up, it cracks. Anyway, these have been redone, and they're nothing special. Unlike the factory, notice how flat they are here, and we don't have any opposing grain. I just had a hole repaired here, and it looks like a repair. And then I had them re-dyed. It wasn't just spray painted. I took it to a upholsterer and had it done right. But anyway, I actually, on my own personal driver, just recently took the leather out. It looked just like this. Good intention leather kit put in it, and put vinyl in it. Vinyl wears so much better, and it looks more correct. So I will offer this to the new buyer, no matter what the bidding price ends up being. I will sell you at cost the vinyl interior kit for the front seats only, new foam if it's needed, and I think it is, and of course the installation at the local upholsterer. So that would be my recommendation. Take it for what it's worth. The rest of the interior is really spectacular in this car. You really can't pick it apart. That does it for the basic interior of this car. Oh, I wanted to point out that at some point somebody had put on some little registration clip here. So we have two little indentations in the visor. It's one of the worst parts of this interior. I usually hate these things, you know, most people just threw them away. I don't like seeing them on my visor, but what I found interesting is what old car is just like this in the directions? You know, you're supposed to push the pedal once slowly and turn the key when it's cold and it'll start. And then when it's warm, you just turn the key. That's it. What old car actually starts that way? Well, this is that old car. We're in March here, and I've started this car multiple times in the cold in the morning, and it does exactly that. One slow pump, turn the key, and then it just runs. It's amazing. So anyway, this was driven here about an hour and a half ago. So let's see if it is true to form on a warm engine start. I should be able to just touch the key, not even hover over the gas pedal, and we should be running. Let's go for a ride. This car has only been driven a couple hundred miles in the last decade plus, and only a dozen miles since the front end's been rebuilt. Well, anyway, a dozen miles by the previous owner. I've now put on a dozen miles or more myself. Anyway, he didn't trust anyone in his locale to align it. Well, I do trust my guy, so this will have an alignment this week. It's not bad, actually. He did pretty good with a tape measure, but I noticed that the steering wheel, here I'm gonna go right down the center of the road, and I'm gonna get the car up to speed, and I'm gonna let go of the steering wheel. And, well, actually it is about centered. Look at that. It feels like maybe just a little to the left. He's not off. This is a pretty good alignment, but anyway, I'm still going to align it. It's just quiet in every way. There's no rattles, there's no squeaks, there's no weird smells. You know, so many people get turned off to a classic car if they're not into them. You know, they always think, oh, it'd be fun to have a classic car like a, you know, Cougar I've always wanted. Well, they get turned off about the 15th repair they have to chase down or squeak, and they take it to these different shops. This is the kind of car a non-classic car guy could own and find very dependable. You know, drive it, buy it like you'd buy a new Camry for $33,000 and change, and just drive it. Ooh. I mean, let it get rock chips, put some miles on it. How much fun would that be? First thing everybody wants to know when they're looking at an old Cougar is do the turn signals and headlights work properly? Well, they work absolutely perfect on this car. And the previous owner didn't do like 99.9% of everybody else and get the modern solid state, never fail sequential unit for the trunk. He sought one out on eBay and paid up for an NOS original motorized unit, which even in a judged situation, you don't get marked down for those because they're not allowed to take apart your trunk and dive in under the underlayment and mess with all that. So that was just for his own satisfaction, is to have that old technology unit back there. I kind of find it comforting because I remember as a kid driving my 68 Grecian Gold Cougar, and whenever I made a turn, you could hear that, that hum, dee-dee-dee-dee, in the trunk. So I kind of like having the original in there, even though the solid state is so much more smarter in the long run.
More smarter.
So much more smarter. Unlike me. I'm going to go ahead and hit these train tracks that are kind of rough at 55 miles an hour to kind of tell you what the ride is like on this car. That's with my hands off the steering wheel. Those are abrupt train tracks. I'm going to walk you through the entire underside of this car and call it as I see it. Today's judging standards are a lot higher than they were in the 80s and 90s, so much of what was accepted then now would be not good enough. For example, I think he powder coated these spindles. Well, that looks good and keeps it from flash rusting, but they're supposed to be natural. I do notice he's gone ahead and gone the extra mile and put some red coating on those nuts, and we got some paint blobs here. We got wire ties here. Of course, they weren't supposed to be copper wire, but again, that'll keep it from rusting. Everything is new on the front suspension. He paid a little extra and got the lower control arms with the jacking tabs and riveted in ball joints. Notice we got the 4 rivet ball joints up here, not the 3 that you'll sometimes see. Everything looks very tidy and doesn't look like we've ever been in a collision here. It drives tight, that's for sure. There's very few miles on this front suspension. I do have a little bit of power steering seepage here that will leave a drip once in a while. I just now tightened up these nuts, and I got a good half a turn on them, so I'll report back later on how that worked out. First thing I always do on these cars, I reach up and I grab the pitman arm with my right hand and the rag joint in my left, and every tiny movement you give the rag joint, you should see an equal movement here on the pitman arm. So here I am, see the tiny movements I'm giving on that rag joint, nothing's happening on the pitman arm. This box needs adjusting, but I can tell that it can be adjusted. If you got a lot of slop, forget it, you got to replace the box. I do think that's the original steering box, and after I tighten it, I think it'll be spot on. It didn't feel goofy going down the road, but obviously we could do better. Yeah, none of this is original Ford on the front suspension that I know of. It's all reproduction. The dual exhaust, this car originally came with a single exhaust, and he tried to do a pretty correct dual exhaust. And when I say correct, it's quiet, and it's using the factory exhaust hangers, and even got some Fomoco logos on the exhaust clamps. So he made an attempt to make it look right and sound right. Okay, the floorboards are 100% original with a sloppy undercoating. He went over it with the aerosol stuff just to make it look pretty, but no patches, no reproduction pans. Doesn't look like anything's ever been hit. A lot of the stuff, you know, this originally was natural. He's used Cast Blast. Those are the correct stripes. These are the original leaf springs, and you might be wondering why the car sits kind of level. From the factory, these had a little bit of a rake, just a little lower in back than front, and a lot of people don't like that, so he went ahead, instead of doing any kind of shackles or, you know, re-arching the springs, he just put aftermarket air shocks. They do hold air perfectly, and the nozzle is in the trunk on the driver's side. And here we got the little shorty mufflers, so he had to custom make some extensions so they reached his bracket, but that works. You know, at first glance, when you look under the car, all you see is the horseshoe correct brackets. You don't see the goofy extensions. These little tabs should only be about a ½ inch deep. They shouldn't be that, but to make his little mini mufflers fit, that's what he had to do. Nothing special about the third member. This tag is in the wrong place. It should be up here and hanging down, not right there. A little bit of seepage, you know, but nothing I would worry about. Okay, this is a reproduction gas tank as evidenced by the drain cock. The drain cock didn't typically come into play until 1969. Trunk drop-offs, rock solid. Those are the original little vents, and the Concours people will actually pay up for those little used vents because the reproductions aren't right. As I put my finger in here, the seam sealer glob is right there like it's supposed to be from the factory. And of course, no metal repair, previous damage, damage from chain, damage from oversized tire. This is all just virgin mint. These wheelhouses, trunk drop-offs, this pinch weld is just the way it should be. These are a dealer option. The dealer options on, I should say, these are an option and could have been bought from your dealer as well. But most likely they came with it since born. They are optional front and rear bumper guards. As with most cars, the hood is going to look shiny, the top surfaces are going to look great. But sometimes that painter didn't get down there low enough, so it's a real, you just barely fogged it in here. So notice that didn't get enough paint on this valance. Right here, it looks a little shadowy. Right here, of course, you know, the only way you're going to see this is with a light shined on it up on a rack. But this is not a flawless paint job. Although I've seen worse paint jobs done months ago for over $10,000. So this has held up really well considering it was done in 1987. You're not seeing any cracking or grazing, shrinkage. It's a quality paint job, just not perfect. We're going to say it's a driver and occasional show quality paint job. Okay, I want to point out these strut rod supports here. A lot of people say, oh, it's been wrecked. Look at these crazy stick welds. No, that's actually what they did from the factory. Yeah, it was that sloppy. But people do put jacks on here. They pull the car out of the ditch by these, and they're often mangled. These need a little attention, but yeah, this one looks wrinkly right here. I'm going to let somebody with more finesse than me, a little heat, work this little ridge out here. No rust though, that's an important thing. And you know, on the East Coast these can get rusty, and this one being over a battery, sometimes they can get really scaly looking. They look good in that respect. Let's also go back here where people often jack the car and screw things up. Yeah, I'm seeing a few little marks here. Just a little bulge in the frame rail, or maybe a floor jack was here. I'm going to go over to this side. This one's more pronounced. I can see where they had one of those, see a little curve here and curve here. They had one of those little cheap hydraulic floor jacks without the rubber pad on it. And they lifted up the entire car's weight there. So nothing terrible, but I had to point out something. down here, or it wouldn't be a very believable video. As for the engine and transmission, the engine's been out, some resealing done on it years ago, but we don't really know. You know, the previous owner got it at 117,000 miles. It runs unusually nice not to have had some major work done to it, and a lot of times 100,000 was the magic number. Okay, at one time, all the documents were with this car, and for a story that's not worth repeating, I'm just going to let you know they're gone. But we do have a couple of important documents here. Here's the original owner that was in Seattle, Washington. I should say original purchaser. He was an attorney at the time, and this was his girlfriend. So you'll see that it was sold to him, and then the warranty information was put in her name shortly thereafter. These are always fun, getting hard to find. I don't believe they're in reprint. I could be wrong, but this is your need help, send gas, driving situations manual, daily check. Good stuff to have. Warranty, this is fun, just a little booklet with lots of pictures of cars from the day. Era Correct Auto Handbook. Warranty information. This is a fake window sticker. If you want a correct one, Kevin Marty sells one. One reason this gives this away as a fake right away is it says AM Stereosonic Tape Player System. This car did not come with that originally, so that's just a made up fun little document there. So here's a fun little tidbit. The previous owner handed me this little Johnny Lightning. He goes, "That's my car." I said, "Oh, that's cool." He goes, "No, that is my car." And sure enough, that's the picture of this car. This was done back in 2002. And here is a verification letter from Playing Mantis, who does the Johnny Lightning series, saying, "Thanks for letting us use your car." So I just thought that was kind of a fun little tidbit. It's not like it adds a lot of value to the car, but it is fun. In conclusion, I think somebody's going to get a great driver, an occasional show car. And as I mentioned before, this car at $30,000+ is cheaper than getting a project car for free that needs everything. Also, a lot of times when people buy a semi-done car or a project, they get burnt out on it. You know, it's got a dozen repairs and squeaks and rattles, and you're used to a modern car, and we'll see it back on auction a year or so later. I think this is a car you could grow old with. And also I want to give a shout out to Flying A Automotive Photography and Videography. He said if I said something, I'd get a 10% discount on my auto listing package. So check him out. He's been a great help to me for years.